Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Hatching. In this film, we focus on Tina. She is this 12-year-old gymnast that also is the child of a mother that is very, image obsessed and things like that. And one day, while they are in the middle of taking a family photo, this bird comes in, starts wrecking havoc throughout the entire house. And, the mom decides to do the completely diplomatic thing of just breaking this bird's neck, which obviously, kind of emotionally scars Tina a bit. And one day she ends up finding this bird in the woods. This bird leaves behind an egg, and Tina decides to raise this egg on her own. This egg eventually does hatch, and when it hatches, it becomes this much more darker side of it starts to become a darker side of Tina that almost becomes her alter ego in a sense. And the rest of the film is how Tina really does start to deal with this creature that starts to emerge. So I was very much interested in this movie. I had a very interesting history, if you guys didn't know, when it comes to this film. I remember I discovered it first at Sundance, and when I first read the plot, I said, this looks like a Sundance movie. This looks like the kind of movie that would only be released at a film festival. It just sounded super pretentious to me, and I just wasn't really interested at all. Basically just kind of wrote it off, but then I ended up watching the trailer, and since then, I have been a lot more intrigued for this movie. It looked dark, it looked very sinister, and it looked like it was going to do something really different from other horror films, and I became increasingly more excited for it as the months went on. And so the fact that it was finally coming out in a theaters, no less, I have no idea how a movie like this ended up getting a wide release in theaters, but I was thankfully able to see it. After watching it, I can say this is a very ambitious and different horror film that I think is very much, decidedly unlike anything you've seen before, and there are many reasons as to why, but we're just getting to right now. And look, getting into the acting here, that is one of the things that I was very much impressed by when it comes to this film. I think everyone really does do a really solid job here, but of course we have to talk about the main actor in this movie, who I am sorry if I pronounce these names wrong, but Siiri Solalinna, who plays our main character of Tina, is fucking amazing in this movie. Mainly because of the fact that she isn't just playing Tina, she also is playing the creature that emerges from the egg, and like I said, starts to become like her alter ego of sorts in Ollila. She just does such an amazing job, mainly because of just how much she has to do in this film. This is a very difficult role to pull off because you have to play two characters that look exactly the same but are completely different in terms of demeanors, in terms of personalities, in terms of just facial expressions overall, and she nails every single bit of it. I generally have not seen a child performance on this level in quite a bit. I mean, what she's able to do in this movie at such a young age is just incredible. I don't know how she was able to pull it off. When she's Tina, she does a really good job of playing this girl that you can see is just so petrified at everything she does. You can see how fearful she is of her mother, but also how driven she is to achieve that idea of perfectionism and things like that, and how much it upsets her when things aren't perfect. I think she does an amazing job with that, but when she's Ollila, she really does kind of get to let loose in a very interesting way. The way that she, takes on this role much more, dark and sinister. I think she does a really good job with that, but also just physicality-wise, the way she contorts her body and things like that is just amazing here. I mean, everything about this performance, I think the movie is worth watching just to see what Solalinna ends up achieving in this film. She is far above, this is a talent that is far beyond her years. I generally can't wait to see what else she is going to do, because knowing the level she is already in her early life, I mean, this could end up being one of the most, I think, impressive character actors, working today, and I cannot wait to see what else she is going to do moving forward. It is such a remarkable performance, and I think, like I said, the movie really is worth watching alone just to see what she's able to do here. And the rest of the actors all do a really good job, but the other actress that I really do need to highlight in this movie is Sophia Heikkilä, who plays Tinya's mom, who, oh my god, I mean, she does such a fantastic job at playing this mom that seemingly is always very positive and bubbly. She's always wearing this, like, you know, very cringy smile on her face that never really seems to go away. It's the kind of smile that, like, haunts your dreams forever. But behind that is this very insecure woman who is so focused on the idea of her perfection and cares so much about her image and is doing and feels that's the only way she's going to get, you know, happiness in life and things like that. And she just does such a great job, I think, of, you know, portraying this role. She never tries to portray her in a way that feels superficial, even though everything about the way this character looks at life is superficial. The way that she portrays this character is anything but. She's a lot more nuanced than that. There's a lot of complexities going on with her, and I thought that she just did a really great job at making this feel like an actual helicopter parent. I mean, if anything, she's the real horror of the movie. You are so utterly terrified of this woman, again, just because of her expectations and how much she really wants to just, like, control her daughter's life in that way, and I thought that she just did such an amazing job here. All of the acting is really good in this film. But now I really do want to get to the directing in this movie, because I think that's something that was very well done here. Hanna Bergholm is not a director that I am obviously familiar with. I have not seen a lot of Finnish films, but after seeing this, I definitely do want to see more of her, because the thing I can definitely say, she has such a unique vision when it comes to directing films. Now, obviously, you know, stylistically wise, you know, we've definitely seen this before, but I think Bergholm is able to put her own little spin on it. I think what she does super well in this movie is that while this film is a horror movie, it also is very much this coming-of-age film, and I feel like it's just as much of a coming-of-age drama as it is a horror film. If anything, I think it actually leans a little more into the coming-of-age sort of feel, and I thought she did a really good job with that here. The drama here feels very genuine. She definitely commits to it really well, but then when we go down the horror path, it's a much different angle than what you're expecting. She's not going for like a bunch of jump scares here and things like that. She really is trying to do something different, and I think her style really stuck out to me as something different, and I liked what she ended up doing when it comes to this film. I thought that it was a very unique approach, and I really did enjoy her directing here. Like I said, I know she's directed other movies before, and I definitely do kind of want to, you know, poke around at her filmography a bit, because I think that the style that she sort of, you know, showcases throughout this entire movie is such a refreshing one. I'm very interested in seeing, you know, what else she has done in her previous films, and I think this is the film that I think is really going to put her on the map overall. But we got to get to the writing in this movie, because that's something that I overall was very impressed by. Starting off with our main character of Tinya, I mean, what they do such a great job with when it comes to her character, one, almost the entire film is in her perspective, so we really are getting that window into her life, but you also can relate to her in the sense that this is someone who is very deeply insecure about herself, to the point of, you know, just the way that she looks. She knows that she has to constantly please her mother. She has a lot of responsibilities that she needs to deal with. It feels like at points maybe she doesn't want to be this gymnastics, you know, sort of athlete, but that's something her mom is constantly pushing her to do. She very rarely has any agency of her own within her life, yet she's constantly looked at as, like, the perfect child. Her mom is, you know, constantly saying that, like, she's, like, the example of the family. She's perfection in that way, and you can see just how superficial this is for her, because, you know, when you take the physical appearance out of the equation, Tinya is a very insecure and very imperfect individual, and I really do like the way that the film does portray that here. And yeah, it can be a bit simplistic with the way that they go about it, but I thought overall, you know, when it came to her character, she's someone I really did find myself latching onto. I think everything the film has to say, you know, about perfection and just how suffocating it can be to have to constantly put on this smile, have to constantly look a certain way, you know, act a certain way, even, I thought was just so well done here, and I thought the way they portrayed it was really well done. But again, when you contrast that with Ali, who at first is just this really, like, unpleasant looking creature, but slowly starts to become a lot more like Tinya, just a lot less, you know, a lot more unkempt, a lot more disheveled in that way, a lot less presentable. I really like what the film is trying to do, I think, because I think what it's trying to do is showcase how these are two sides of Tinya. Ali is sort of the side of Tinya that she keeps locked away. She doesn't want anyone to see this side of her. It's the side that she's afraid for her mom to see, but Tinya is who her mom wants her to be at all times, and I thought that they do a really good job with that. The bond that these two established, I thought was also really well done here. While eventually it does become, you know, a lot more horrifying, for a while there is a certain charm to the bond that these two have. Ali is a lot more rebellious, and this is something that Tinya isn't fully prepared for, but there is this genuine love and warmth to their relationship, and it kind of is dichotomous to the relationship that Tinya has with her own mother. It almost feels like she's trying to give Ali a better parenthood, because, you know, this better sense of you know, motherhood, because she herself has had such a rough childhood, and she doesn't want the same thing to happen to Ali, and she kind of wants to, you know, turn that around overall. And I thought that was a very interesting idea, what they decided to do with that, because at the same time, you know, while these are two different characters, they feel like one entity throughout the entire movie, and I thought that they just did such a great job with that at the end of the day. But getting into the other characters here, you know, like I said, her mother in this film, to me, is the real evil of this movie. I mean, yeah, Ali's the one that's, like, you know, doing all this, like, fucked up shit, but her mom is just as messed up of an individual. I mean, this is someone who is so fixated on, you know, image and perfection, and constantly is telling, you know, and constantly is disapproving of things that her daughter wants to do. You can see that everything that she does to her, you know, is her trying to brainwash her into acting a certain way, into being a certain way. Hell, has this whole fucking Instagram that is a complete and utter lie. She wants to showcase the perfect family and them doing all these great activities, but at the same time, she's nothing like that, and she's well aware of that. And that's what I really liked about the character of her mother in this movie, who I believe is just Mother. We don't actually know her name, which I thought was really well done, because it kind of showcases that, like, outside of being this controlling mom, she doesn't really have much of a identity in that way. And I thought that was intentional, because it kind of shows that, you know, this character is someone who subtly throughout the movie we see, I think, wanted to take on a much different life, and I think the film approaches that very well here. This character herself is a complete and utter hypocrite. I'm not going to get into why, but she is anything but perfection. And I mean, without getting into too much, like, if you had to make a list of, like, the worst moms ever portrayed in film, this woman is very much at the top of the list. I mean, I was just so appalled by so many decisions that this character made throughout the movie. The way she treated her daughter, hell, the way she treats the rest of her family, completely just disregards her son, treats him like shit, is comparing him to Tinya. I mean, she is just such a monster in that way, and the film really does not hold back at all. And I thought that they did such a great job in portraying this character and showing this very contentious relationship between the two. That's something that I really did appreciate about this movie. But I also really like just how downright bizarre this movie does get, because I think that's something a lot of people are not going to expect. Yes, this is a body horror, but not in the way you would expect. This is not like a David Cronenberg movie or things like that. This film's a body horror in a much different sense, and I thought for the most part it worked really well. I can understand if for some people it's going to turn them off, because it can get a little bit too weird, especially one recurring element throughout the movie involving something that comes out of your mouth. That's all I will say. They do this a lot. They use it a lot, and I think for some people it's just gonna be a little bit too much for them. But for me, I really like the ideas of what they were trying to get into here. I liked what they were trying to symbolize. I like what this movie's trying to say about, you know, that perfect image and how that's constantly in conflict, you know, and how that's in conflict with the more rougher and, you know, the reckless version of yourself that you really want to be. You want to be imperfect and things like that, you know, kind of showing those imperfections. I think the movie just does a really good job with all of that, and I think that overall this is a very compelling story to watch. So again, I really did enjoy a lot of the writing here, but my god, we gotta talk about the visuals in this film, because this film has such a distinct, like, visual style throughout, and that's something that I really did appreciate. One thing I noticed especially is just how, like, artificially bright everything is in terms of the colors, and I think this was very intentional, because again, it's supposed to show this, like, picture perfect lifestyle, and at points it's, like, so gross to look at because everything is just so colorful throughout the movie. But I thought they did a really good job when it came to the cinematography here. I think that there are some really great shots throughout this movie. In particular, though, the way this film decides to go about Ali doing what she eventually ends up doing was much different than what you see in a lot of horror films. This movie isn't overly graphic in terms of blood, because a lot of it is actually done off screen, and that's something that I really did appreciate. Normally, that would be an issue for me, but I think it works really well in this film, what they decided to do with it. It was just very refreshing to watch. It made this film feel very much more original, and you know, it made this film just feel a lot more original and very much its own thing in that way, and that's something I really did appreciate. I always like when films are trying to do something different, and that's something I will always applaud this movie for, is that it does get really ambitious, and that translates over to the cinematography, which I think is very well done in this movie. And the horror itself definitely does work quite well here. I wouldn't say this movie's, like, terrifying to watch, but there definitely were some very effective moments, one especially involving a house. That's all I will say. But the way that that whole scene was depicted, I thought was very well done. I really love what they did in terms of the horror with this movie, because like I said, they are trying to do something different with it, and I think it very much did pay off in the end. The score as well is really good here. It's very, like, tense and eerie, and I thought that they did a really good job when it came to the score in this film. And like I said, the way this film is edited once Ali is really just up to no good and is very much just, like, doing her own thing, I thought was really interesting the way they decided to go about it. I don't know if it's going to work for everyone, but I thought it was a very interesting way of showcasing, you know, just what Tinya is really going through. I thought it was really well done in that way. It really haven't seen anything quite like that before, and I think that's another thing that just really sticks out to me, is the true uniqueness of this movie. And the editing, I will say, I do think this movie is a little too short. The movie's only 90 minutes, and I think that there were some points that could have been paced a little bit better. And that's where we get into some of my issues with this movie, because this by no means is a perfect film. There definitely are some things that I think do bring it down overall. One of them being that aside from, and it honestly I think is a pretty big issue that brings this down, while I really appreciate what this film does with Tinya and the fact the entire movie focuses on her character through her perspective, I actually think it does hurt the film in some aspects, especially when it comes to the characters of her father and her brother. They are very, very one-note in this movie. There really is not much given to them at all. There are points in this movie where there are things revealed about her mother, and her father should have a much bigger reaction to it than he is, but he seems just kind of, like, content with it, and I wanted to know why. Like, why is he reacting this way? The movie never really dives deep into him at all, and at points I just didn't really feel like he was a character that needed to be here. I feel like you could kind of cut this character out of the movie and it wouldn't really make that much of a difference. And I understand why he's here, because again, he's supposed to represent that, like, perfect, you know, superficial family in the sense, but they don't really do much of anything with him. And then her brother, I felt like there was a lot of untapped potential with his character. We get the sense that he's very jealous of Tinya. He's constantly blaming her for things. Anything that happens in this movie, he wants her to take the blame for, because he wants that same affection that she's getting. But it just just turned into a very cliche story of this brother that's constantly wanting to get approval. At points, it feels very sitcom-y in that way, the directions they go with his character, and I just felt there was a lot more potential to really dive into the effect that this is going to have on him, and they never really do that, and I think that definitely does bring the movie down quite a bit, because her family plays a very large role in this movie, and the fact that there's two major characters that I can't connect to, that's definitely something that I had an issue with here. And I also did feel like the third act in general was a bit rushed, the way everything goes down. I think that they really could have taken some more time in getting us there. Oh my god, we're in much horrible audio quality now, and I do apologize for that, but there was something that I just realized I forgot to bring up in this review. So another issue that I had with this movie in regards to like characters that are underused, there is this character that Tinya frequently comes across, and the name of her character is Reino. She is kind of like a heightened version of Tinya. She's, you know, better at gymnastics. She's better at everything. Everyone, you know, sees her as like the next big thing in that way. And they just didn't really do much with that character at all. I felt that there was a lot of untapped potential they could have done with that character. They have an intriguing setup with her, but they just didn't really go anywhere. And I think that ultimately did kind of bring some things down for me. Not completely sink the film, but it's another element that I think, had they dived into her a little bit more, could have made the film that much better, but unfortunately that was not the case. And I also felt that the beginning of this film was just a little bit too rushed. The first scene you see in the trailer of this movie, that's actually the first scene in this movie, and I would have liked to see some stuff leading up to that. I want to see this family and how they live their life, and again, just how fake it all feels, and again, see how that really is affecting all of these characters. I would have liked to see that, because I think it would have made the scenes in the film where, you know, eventually that starts to become a lot less perfect, that much more effective, and I think they could have done more with that throughout this film for sure. I would have liked for them to dive a bit deeper into some elements here, and there are some things that I just don't really know how to feel about. I will be honest with you about that, and that's something else that I think did bring this movie down. But I gotta say, with the refreshing elements and just how original this film really is, I just can't help but really end up enjoying this film overall. I love how much it was able to say in its short run time about, again, the imperfection and, you know, and having this helicopter parent in your life and how that can really, you know, affect a child in a big way. I think they do a really good job with that in this movie. What it has to say about image and things like that, I think is really well done here. And, you know, what it does in terms of horror as well is very different from what I've seen in other movies. It has a very, like, eerie feel throughout the entire thing. It always had my attention, and while I do think there are some elements that are just a little bit too cliche for my taste, at the end of the day, I really did appreciate just how different this film really was, and such a masterful performance from Siiri Solalinna, who I am convinced is going to be the next big thing in terms of breakthrough actors. I cannot wait to see what she ends up doing next. This is definitely not going to be a film that I think is going to work for everyone, just because of how truly weird and at points utterly disgusting it can get, but it's a film that very much did work out for me in a pretty big way. I very much was impressed by Hatching, and I am going to give it a B. But over, guys, to my review of Hatching. Let me know what you guys saw this movie at all. If your thoughts on it, we'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.